boys don't become men just by getting older.
Every boy eventually learns to ask two key questions. The first question is, what does it take to be a man? The second question is, do I have what it takes? If a boy's father does not answer those questions, the culture is all too happy to fill in the blanks. Today, Rob Stout is talking about the privilege and responsibility men have to call and guide their sons out of boyhood and into manhood. And his guest is Chris Bruno, author of the Man Maker Project and co-founder of Restoration Project in Fort Collins, Colorado. The Next Stage Podcast for Men is a bi-weekly audio and video podcast helping a man live a life of purpose, born out of his identity as a man created in God's image. For more information about Rob Stout, the Next Stage Podcast, or Sherpa Unlimited, see the show notes or visit sherpaunlimited.com/podcast. Welcome to The Next Stage. The Next Stage's production and marketing is by Christopher Mann at Resermon Thought Leader Marketing, a marketplace ministry to pastors. For more information, email hello@resermon.com.
Chris Bruno, welcome to The Next Stage, and thank you for joining us today. I'm super glad you're with us.
Thank you. I am honored to be here, Rob.
Yeah, we are really connected by a mutual friend whose name's Bart, but I'm excited about what you do. I love what you do. We're on parallel tracks together, and I want to dive right in to a critical area of your work and of the work that God has given every man to be actively involved in initiating his son into manhood. And I want to throw a quote at you from the Man Maker Project, that boys don't become men automatically. They become older boys. Could you just tell us about that, vamp on that a little bit, and why does that happen? Why is it so important that boys don't just grow up to be older boys, but they grow up to be men?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, yeah. So I'll start with this, Rob, that I believe that the word father is actually more meant to be a verb than a noun. And that God has given every one of us men this responsibility and this fathering energy to bring into the world his father heart and his father desire, and his father words. And so that participation, I think, of us men with the Father is to bring our, to come alongside and father the world around us. And what more important place than for us to intentionally father those children that he has given us in our nuclear family, right? If there is a primary place, that is it. Now, we can talk lots about that fathering energy in our churches, in our careers, in our communities, in our schools, like all of that. I still believe there's fathering energy there, but I'll focus it here on our boys. And why I say that is because boys don't become men just by getting older. There's no automatic transition like there is. I'll put it this way: there's no automatic transition for the soul like there is for the body. Now, a boy's body will automatically go through puberty and become a adult male body. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that every adult male is a man. He may just have an adult male body and still be a boy inside. And so there is a
50 and 60-year-old boys, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I just call it, that there's so many adult males who walk around. They're just boys who shave. Yeah. and that's the reality. And they can be 50, 60, 70 years old, or they can be, 17, 18, 19, 25 years old, and they're still this boy inside. And what makes a boy move into manhood is the refining initiation of the father. And that's why I say that in the Man Maker Project, because it is our charge of God to make men out of our boys. And if we don't, they will just become older boys.
Yeah. I love that. And yet there's an ache. And I know you've experienced this with men that you've worked with probably in your own life. I know I have. What happens to a boy or a man if he cannot answer the question, do I have what it takes? Mm-hmm. What happens there?
Oh man, I know that question deep in my own soul, because
so
I did not have an initiation process with my dad. And I feel like what ends up happening is that we do everything we can and search everywhere we can go, and ask every other relationship that we have, and ask every other possible thing in our lives that question, do I have what it takes? We ask our wives, we ask our careers, we ask our theology, we ask our, bank account. We ask all those things. Is this enough? How will I know, do I have what it takes? And by and large, there are so many adult men who have in some way found some semblance enough to be able to operate as, in manhood in the world, some semblance enough. And still there is that ache, right? If we're actually honest, there still is that ache that goes like, oh, I now have a mortgage. I now have a family. I now have a career. And I still am wondering, like, would someone please tell me, do I have what it takes? Yeah. Will someone please tell me I am man enough?
Absolutely. And that's why I would say that not only needs answered in transitioning to boyhood to manhood, but it needs answered every day. I do that with the heart of the Father every day. And I do that with men around us. Not that I'm constantly looking for affirmation, but I am. I'm looking for, do I have what it takes today to hit this challenge? Do I have what it takes? And having God go, yep, I believe in you. I made you. And to be in a brotherhood of men, which I know is a whole nother area of your work, to go, yeah, I see this in you. I see it in you. To have wise counsel around us.
Yeah. Man. I mean, it's the difference, I think, Rob, between father hunger and father ache and wound. So every single person on the planet has father hunger, meaning that we were born designed to have a hunger for that fathering energy I just talked about, right? And that fathering hunger is the same as our body hunger. It is new every day, and we need to find a way to feed it. And the problem comes when we either don't have a place to feed it, or that need gets met through the words of other men, through the words of the Lord, right? That when we don't have that, it becomes an ache or a wound. And the wound is in the absence of those words ever. The wound is in the Father, our actual biological Father, who didn't give that to us, or no one along the way who spoke those words over us and into us and invited us into the company of men. There is a wound there. And the only way to heal the wound is through finding men who will speak into our lives, finding men who will not just give us compliments or encouragement, but who will give us words of blessing. That says, I see who you are and I affirm who you are. It's the words of that came from the Spirit of God at the baptism of Jesus. You are my son. You have a place to belong. Whom I love, like my affection is for you. Right. And then also in whom I delight. Right.
And this was Jesus, a 30-year-old man who had probably been through his bar mitzvah. Right.
Oh yeah. So he's still hungering for that, and the Spirit still offers him that. And so those are the words that we long to hear every day.
But perhaps at no other time is that needed than in going from boyhood to manhood. And the point that we're anchoring this whole thing on is that manhood doesn't happen by accident. It's given, it's modeled, it's blessed, it's called out by another man. And you say in the Man Maker Project, if we don't initiate our sons, the culture will, and it will not lead them to true masculinity. Explain that a little bit.
One of and I quote this also in the Man Maker Project, is one of my favorite African proverbs, is that if we do not initiate our sons, they will burn down the village just to feel the heat. Okay. And so there's something, again, about how God made us as as male, as masculine, as boys, that we need the heat of the father to temper the heat of the boy.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up, that's this initiation process, right? That's why it's important for us to have an intentional initiation and rites of passage process for our boys. Now, what you just said is that, like, if we don't do that, there are plenty of other initiations into something that the world would love to offer. Initiation into pornography, initiation into anger, initiation into narcissism, initiation into, like, whatever you want to say, initiation into resignation and abdication, right? There's plenty of other things that the world would like to initiate our boys into. And so it's up to us to initiate them into actual manhood, because back to that quote, if we don't do that, they will look for something to initiate them.
Absolutely.
We will look for something to initiate us. We know just inherently, instinctively, that is part of our makeup, and we need something to initiate us. And if it's not dad, if it's not another surrogate dad, if it's not another male who's doing that intentionally unto my goodness and my manhood,
Mm-hmm.
then there are plenty of other options.
Yeah. They will burn down the village just to feel the heat. Is that not, how many times have we done that? I will do something really dumb just to say I did that. Like, there's something that energy needs to be directed to. And I had a man tell me this week, he was like, I wasn't a bad kid. I just needed it directed. I needed it channeled. I needed it called out into something better.
Yeah. Every one of us is looking for a guide.
Yeah.
And every one of us is looking for some direction to go and some affirmation that, just like we said a moment ago, you have what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You are man enough. You are a man. And otherwise we'll be asking, ski jumps and recklessness and sex and all those other things for that affirmation.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that adventurous spirit. That needs tapped into all the time. But yeah, it will go into violence. It will go into pornography. It'll go into victimization. It'll go into, making a career your God. It'll go into the chase after money, all to say, am I enough? Do I have what it takes?
Yep. Yeah. And on the flip side of that, Rob, like, what would it look like for your son, or for yourself, but let's just go back to initiating our boys, your son, to always have in his, like, burned into his memory, moments and faces of men when he was being shaped in those earlier years of his life. When he goes, do I have what it takes today? He can go back into the archives of his memory and go, like, I remember the face of my father and the words of my father that said, yes, you do. Like, I don't know what that would feel like. I hope my son, who's now an adult and off living in the world, he can go back to that time and go, I do. My dad said so.
Yeah.
My dad's friends said so.
Yep.
And they welcomed me into the company of men, and here I am.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the reality, man, is that if manhood doesn't happen by mistake, if we don't do it, somebody else will, and it has to be instilled, it has to be formed, it has to be shaped in the company of men. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump into what this looks like very practically. Chris, in his work and in his experience, has done an amazing job at giving men literally a roadmap, a trail map for how to do this with sons. So we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Men are now under attack, not physically, but spiritually, mentally, and relationally. Men are distracted, isolated, addicted, passive in their marriage, disconnected with kids, and a lot of men are wrestling with why they feel empty, even though they're successful. Many men are tempted to throw in the towel, and in fact, many have, sadly. I'm Rob Stout, the host of the Next Stage podcast and founder of Sherpa Unlimited. And in addition to the work that we do here with the Next Stage, I speak at men's conferences, retreats, churches, and leadership events for the purpose of encouraging men to not only face their challenges, but to live with passion, purpose, power, and perspective in their daily lives. I've found that when a man understands who he is, he starts leading differently in his home, at work, and in the world around him. If your church or organization wants to call men to live higher instead of simply putting band-aids on wounds, then let's partner together. Simply email me at the next stage at Sherpa Unlimited, and let's talk about your vision for your next men's events, conference, or retreat. Let's go.
Learn more about having Rob Stout speak and teach at your next event at sherpaunlimited.com/speaker, or email the next stage at sherpaunlimited.com.
Welcome back with Chris Bruno of the Restoration Project, and we're going to jump into exactly how that looks like for you as a dad, how you can prepare your son for manhood and initiate him into that. And so fortunate to have Chris with us. Chris, walk us through that. What does that look like? How does that happen practically? You've done an amazing job, and I've been a part of some of these ceremonies and these manhood years with some of my friends that you lead. But walk us through that. What's it look like?
Yeah. Well, so I think I want to just separate it out into two primary categories first.
Mm-hmm.
So the first category is your intentionality as a father. And the second category is then your action as a father.
Mm-hmm.
So one is more internal inside of you. You're thinking, you're praying, you're reflecting, you're planning, like all of that stuff that happens inside of your intentionality. And that starts, honestly, Rob, with you reflecting and praying over your own manhood journey and the story that has brought you to this place, and what the ache is inside of you still, and what has happened for you, because whatever you don't address in your own life will leak into your son. Yeah. And so I want to just start that process up here with your intentionality. You're thinking, you're praying, you're talking with other men. I've got a son. I want to do this. And no one ever did this for me. Or here are some gaps that I feel. I want to do some of that internal work.
So it starts. I'm going to time out right there, because the fact, and we talk about this all the time, you cannot impart what you do not possess. You cannot say, by the way, okay, I'm over here. I'm a car mechanic. All of a sudden, I'm going to be a brain surgeon. Like,
right.
But it's got to be born out of the work that a man is doing. And then we hand it off. Right. So I love the fact that you started there. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And that requires, I think, Rob, some of what we were just a little while ago. It requires a brotherhood of other men to be talking about this, speaking into your life, filling some of those gaps, wondering some of those things with you, praying over you, doing some of that internal work in your own manhood before you attempt to pass it on to your son. Okay. So there's that intentionality for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you begin the process of like, all right, now what is it that I want to form in the character of my son? What is it that I want for him to carry? What is it I want for him to know? How am I going to lay this out, creating kind of the plans and visions of these kinds of things? And here's the other piece around this, Rob. And that is that it is more about the character of your son that you are calling out than it is imparting your character as the father into him. Who is the son that God has given you? What is the uniqueness of his glory? What is the uniqueness of how your son reflects the face of God? And I need to know the unique heart of my son in order to call it forth, call the man inside of him forth. Mm. And that requires a lot of reflection and a lot of prayer and a lot of awareness of who my son is.
Yeah.
And because what the world needs is for him to be the man that God created him to be, not the man that I created him to be.
Absolutely. And it doesn't need a clone of you or Babe Ruth or Bill Gates or whoever it is, right? Yeah. Love that.
So some of every rites of passage journey has to be uniquely crafted to the uniqueness of the son. Mm-hmm. And there might be some scaffolding that I'll give you here in a second when we get into the actionable part, but this just the slow, intentional, reflective, prayerful process of who are you and who is he, and now how are we together going to walk this journey? forward, right? So that's long before any action gets taken.
It starts day one, right?
Okay.
Like, who is this man unfolding? What's going on?
Yeah. So then in some of the actionable things, and I lay this out pretty clearly in the Manmaker Project book, some places talk about having ceremonies like this one and done kind of ceremony. I actually believe that the formation of the soul takes more time and needs to be over the course of a year at least, if not a couple of years. So in the Manmaker Project book, I lay out what I call a man year, and that is this kind of taking a year, dividing it out into a couple of month segments, and then each in those segments focusing on some aspect of manhood that I want to both teach on, experience, and then call out in the life of my son. And so each family is going to look potentially different. I lay out in Manmaker Project the 6 character qualities that I wanted to make sure that for my son came forth. Your family might be different. You can use the 6 that are in the Manmaker Project, or you can create your own. And it's all, again, who is the boy and who is the father, and how are we uniquely going to be doing this journey? So then,
and those qualities, by the way, well done. And they're not exclusive or exhaustive, right? But courage, integrity, excellent action, kingdom focus, productive leadership, and purity, right? Is that?
Yes.
I think that's it.
Protective leadership.
Protective leadership.
Protective leadership and purity. Yes. Yeah. And so, like, whatever you feel like, and like I said, I wanted those things specifically, and they are kind of some general manhood things as well. Sure. I had a list of 12, and my friend was like, hey, you should probably cut that down, because even what is he actually going to for? 10, right? So, and then the other thing, Rob, is that in the journey, the father is the driver, but he doesn't run everything of this man year. That there is this invitation of other trusted men to round out like the fathering of this boy. And what it does is it sets the stage for your son to have an expectation of brotherhood in his man years of his life, not just the neighborhood boys that he's like riding bikes with right now. That masculine relationships are formative for life, not, and invite these other men into that. So for each of those 6 segments, I had a friend come in, and whether it was a friend, a grandfather, an uncle, someone come alongside of those couple of months for some intentional conversations around that manhood characteristic. Okay. So it was very kind of structured in that sense. And it was also responsive. So during the protective leadership segment of that year, I had another man speak to him about that and spend some time with him. We watched some movies together, and we were and then had conversations after the movies of where did you see protective leadership. We had some, Bible conversations. We had some other, it was this sense of like, we're going to soak in this idea for a couple of months in conversation, experience, and watching movies and reading things and all that kind of stuff, so that he got kind of settled in. And, boys, right? We don't listen to everything that people tell us. And so we need it in this form, and then this form, and then that form, and then this form. And slowly, when we begin to like sit in it for a while, by osmosis, now it begins to settle in. So, so there's that. And then go ahead.
No, and you don't just do it in, hey, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, let's sit down and act like we're 50. You're doing it through activity, through experience, through adventure. I love that, because a lot of times we project, okay, so they need to be about me. I'm a conversation guy. Come on, man. A 14-year-old brain, you've got to have sweat and blood and tears and activity and adventure and all of that formed into that too. So like, can you give me an example of of a dad or an experience that someone has done that was much more experiential than conversational
Oh, well, I mean,
around
one
one
of the
another?
things, yeah. So I think your point is really valid here, Rob, and that is back to the heat. Like, you need to bring some heat into this. And it's
Yes.
not just conversation, it's moving his body and doing those things. And one of the things that we do in Restoration Project is that we offer wilderness adventures
Yeah.
that dads are bringing their sons on, and daughters in a different experience. We can talk about daughters' rites of passage in a totally other conversation because it's very different from boys. But we
Mhm.
do these wilderness experiences where we're doing 5-day backpacking trips, and the conversations on the trail are
Right.
part of that. The experiences that the boys have while we're in the wilderness are all designed to usher him into these kinds of places and these kinds of conversations. So
Yeah.
it's creating the environment around the boy for the conversation that needs to happen, and for the conversation to lead into the environment. It's very interwoven in those kinds of things.
I love that.
So
Love it. Love it.
yeah, I
Yes,
mean, one
one quick
one
question.
example I could offer real
Go
quick
ahead.
is just one very practical example is this father took the boy to do some like rock climbing and rappelling. And it
Mhm.
was the first time this boy had ever done that kind of a thing. And it was off the edge of a very high cliff.
Mhm.
Okay. And of course the father has all the training to do this. The father's a firefighter. He knows what to do, like all emergency services, like all that kind of stuff. And so there was
Mhm.
all the safety of the father, and it was still the terror for the boy of going off the edge the first time to rappel off of this. I think it was about a 70-foot cliff or something like that.
Mhm.
And in the midst of that, it was the adventure of it, the terror of it, the experience of it, the rest in the father of it. And at the bottom afterwards, it wasn't just like, oh, that was awesome, that was a great experience, but it was reflection on kind of this kingdom mindset,
Mm.
kingdom focus of like, and so where in the midst of this is God? Well, God is like the father at the top who has set up the ropes for you and is going to make sure that you're not going to fall. And like, how do we have an understanding that the kingdom is all around us? That's the kind of
Mm.
thing that brings the conversation into the experience and the experience under the conversation. So
Absolutely. Love that. Love that. Yeah. And so let me ask you a question. And this was kind of with me all week as I was thinking about this.
uh-huh.
How have you been involved in helping boys who don't have dads?
Mhm.
There's a young man in my life I'm thinking about, no dad. I'm kind of it for him. Like,
Uh-huh.
how have you seen that? And I've got 3 daughters. I don't have a son. Um, so
Mhm.
yeah. So what would you say, I guess, to me?
Yeah.
How can I be involved in his life, not being a dad, but having that father spirit in his life and helping guide him?
Yeah, I love that. So first of all, one of the things that we have to recognize, and this is some other ministries do, like take boys out into the wilderness with some camp counselors or stuff like that and do some really good work in that. We don't do that because we always want to ground the boy in a lifelong relationship back home. And the camp counselor is going to be someone who could have a momentary influence on the boy for sure, as good as that is. And we want to ground the boy in that relationship long term. So it's someone like you having conversations with whoever is currently the primary caregiver, whether it's his mom or
Mhm.
a foster parent or someone like that, and asking for not permission but partnership
Yeah.
in the ushering of that boy into manhood, because it's honoring who she is. If it's his mom, for example,
Sure.
honoring who she is and recognizing like, hey, what I want to partner with what you're doing and maybe offer some spaces that you can't to this boy.
Mhm.
So there is that conversation that needs to happen. And then honestly, Rob, it is inviting the boy into more intentional time. Maybe it's a once a month coffee, or maybe it's coming on one of these experiences, or however the format, the time that you get with him is to invite him into that and say, hey, you're coming up on being a young man,
Mm-hmm.
and I see you without a father, and I am not your father. And back to what we were talking about at the beginning is this fathering energy, like, and I also don't want you to grow up without a man seeing who you are and what you are and who God has made you to be. And I would love the opportunity to bring you through a journey of becoming a young man. Would you be willing? So, there's the invitation of willingness from the boy, the partnership from his primary caregiver. And then honestly, it is doing the very same things. It is having that intentional mindset. It is setting up the actions. It is inviting him to these experiences that I think, and we've had grandfathers, we've had stepfathers, we've had surrogate fathers from the church, who are just friends of the family, do these kinds of things. And we know as men that any man, best is the father for sure. But any man who steps in the role of father when there isn't one, there is blessing upon that from the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And with the stats of single parent homes right now, it's huge. It's huge. So
yeah, very needed.
So take us back. I kind of got us off track a little bit.
Yeah, it's okay.
But take us back. We've got this manhood year with these experiences, these values, characteristics that we're building in. What happens then?
Yeah. So again, it's driven by the father and it's held together by the brothers who are with him. And so and it doesn't have to be these massive, 5-day backpacking experiences. Mm-hmm. It could be a Saturday afternoon. Or it could be something more. Like I took one of my friend's sons, along with a friend of mine and his son, to downtown Denver. And we spent one night in a hotel down there. And the whole point is in the purity conversation. And so we walked the boys around some of the more seedy parts of downtown and asked them, and stood across the street and looking at those certain clubs and things like that.
They were strip clubs, right?
Right, strip clubs and stuff like that, and ask them, like, who do you see going in and out? What do you imagine is happening to the women in there? What do you imagine is happening? Like, all of this purity is not just about restraint. It is about having a vision for who God made the other. And so thinking about the other in the way that God thinks about, and in the sense of purity, like her. So it's having those kinds of experiences. Don't have to be huge. Don't have to be like, 5 weeks in Europe kind of a deal. So lay out those 6 months, have those experiences, and then culminate those experiences in a test, in some kind of challenge. And it should be a mental challenge. Should be a soulful challenge, and it should be a body challenge. Because the question is, am I a man? Do I have what it takes that every one of us boys is asking? And so he's going to need to pass the test that says yes to those questions inside of him. And so the culminating experience kind of ceremony is him answering, some kind of, do you understand? Explain to me what it means to be a man. Explain to me in my characteristics in the book, what is protective leadership? What is kingdom focus? Give me some examples of that. How have you experienced those things? So offering some questions around that, and then some kind of physical journey that matches the spiritual journey. And what I did, and guys have done this in all different ways, what I did was I set the men who were part of his man year along a trail. And then on that trail, he had to hike by himself, this several mile trail as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old.
Sure.
This several mile trail. And then he came across these men along the way, and each of these men tested him in the character thing that they led him through, and then gave him a brick, which then I had kind of wrote that word on it. So courage or protective leadership on that brick. And when he passed the test with that man, that brick went in his backpack. And then he walked up to the next guy and same thing. And then another brick went in the backpack. And then he walked up to the next. So by the time he's on the end of this journey, metaphorically, he is carrying the weight of manhood.
Mm.
And he's passed through each one of these tests. He's carrying the weight of manhood and arrives at a place where then I am, and then those men gathered around him to verbally offer him blessing and invitation from where he was as a boy into the company of men with now us.
Mm.
And that ceremony included a gift. It included some words that I offered, it included some letters that some others had written that we read. And it was this kind of very clear moment of after this year journey and after today's journey and after the weight of manhood that you have now carried, we declare you a man and you are now part of the company of men. Now, the reality, Rob, is that at 13 years old, he did not become a man. Right? Like he's still trying to figure this thing out. And we wanted to answer the question for the next time because it's more like him growing into his manhood at that point.
Right. Right. And there are cultures around the world and throughout time, as both of us have studied. I remember watching Roots when I was like, I don't know, fifth grade or something like that. It was the first time. And number one, the circumcision scene in that was scared the crap out of me. I was like, that big knife. I was like, whoa.
You're already mad about that. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was it was a hunting thing. He was taken away from his mother and it was, he was brought into the company of men and he went back in as a warrior, and he had his own place and that doesn't happen. And so guys are left to figure it out through their sexuality or their sports career or their intellect or whatever, or violence or gang membership or whatever, just leaves a hole.
It is a threshold that needs to be crossed. And if it's not crossed, we will create multiple thresholds and ask those thresholds to answer that same question. And I'm aware too, Rob, like there's probably guys who are listening to this conversation who have like 1-year-old boys. And I want to say to you, like, great, you have time to prepare. And there's nothing magical about 12 or 13. That's when I did it with my son. But there's something about the testosterone wash that starts to happen and the shift into puberty. And when it's most formative, I think, when it is in conjunction with the body's becoming a man. Let's help the soul become a man in parallel. That's, I think, most helpful. So if you've got a 1-year-old, great. You've got years to prepare, to think about and all that kind of stuff. If you've got a 15, 18-year-old, 25-year-old, and you're like, dang it, he's not 12. He's already gone through puberty and all of that. If you've got a 30-year-old, the reality is, man, that these kinds of journeys they look different for older boys and men. They're just as valuable.
Man, there's a loneliness and isolation epidemic going on in our world today. 50% of men report frequent feelings of loneliness. Another 50% report not having any close friends. And 70% of men report not having a significant relationship or a conversation that goes beyond the surface level in the last week. Life doesn't have to be that way. In fact, Sherpa Unlimited has come along and said, we want to help solve that problem. And I want you to picture your world like this. Picture your world where you have other strong men around you who are heading the same direction you are. Not just yes men in your life or drinking buddies or poker playing buddies or something like that, but men where you had the opportunity to grow, to really foster the kind of life that you want, to grow that internal world that allows you to be the man you need to be at work, at home, in your community. Men who are there to challenge you, but also lift you up when you fall. And we all do. I want you to check out Sherpa Unlimited's opportunity that we have coming up. They're called Ascent Men's Communities. These are bi-weekly groups that meet literally anywhere in the world. You have to invest in these. They're not just free, but it's very affordable. You'll see. Less than the cost of a couple pizzas and certainly less than the cost of your gym membership. Go to sherpaunlimited.com/ascent. We'll see you in one of our Ascent Men's communities very soon.
Every single one of us still wants to hear the words of our Father's blessing. And so, like, it's never too late either. So it's never too early to begin, and it's never too late to go back and say to your 30-year-old son, hey, I miss some things. And there's some things that I've been thinking about wanting to do with you that honestly I should have been doing this back when you were a teenager. And would you be willing to come with me on a journey?
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, and the continual brotherhood of men that we're around who continually bless us in that. And we need that, man. Because we're like buckets with holes in the bottom. Like, we're leaking all the time.
Yeah.
And I need that all the time.
All the time.
That's great.
One of the other books that I've written, Rob, is called Sage, and it's all about the intentional second half of a man's life. And just briefly, if the first passage of a man's life is this boy to man, I'll say this: the father's role is to call the man forth out of the boy. The second passage is becoming this sage, or becoming this older man in the second half of his life, where it's actually bringing the boy home to the man. So I say all that because one of the other things that we do is we do this journey into a sage journey. There's two of them. One is for older men in Ireland. One of them is for kind of men who are younger than 60 in Scotland. And there are men who are 70 years old who have been on these journeys where we as a company of men do a rites of passage moment for those 70-year-olds and welcome them into the company of men, because no one ever did that. 50-year-olds, the 40-year-olds who are coming on these journeys. It is so important for this declaration to occur. Something just like shifts and settles inside when we can do that. So it's never too late. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And just to put a ribbon on the focus of where we're at with boys moving into manhood, I want to land it and just say, listen, men, this does not have to be perfect. You do not have to have it all together. You don't have to. In fact, Chris and I would both put our hands in the air as if you have to wait for that. You keep looking, man, because we're not it. On the other hand, man, it is so important that you breathe the breath of life into your sons who are becoming men, because it doesn't happen accidentally. It's given, it's modeled, it's called out, and it's done through initiation. And you can do that. You've got both the honor, the responsibility, and the godly duty to do that. Yes. You're the only one who can.
Yes.
Like, it's that critical.
It is that critical. And and I think it's that critical because, Rob, if you don't, the cost is so high. Right? The reality
is a wound that lasts for a lifetime.
It will be a wound that will last for a lifetime inside of your son. And you probably know that wound. And do you want to pass on the wound? Or do you want to be the man who changes the trajectory of his family tree? And the reality is, men, it takes one man. It takes one father to say, yes, that is me. And, back to some biblical language, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. This is that you? In Lord of the Rings language, it is like, you shall not pass, right? This is the moment. This is the generation where everything changes. And it will be because of the actions that I take in the life of my son that will no longer allow generational curse to pass, but will change it into generational blessing. That is something that we can each do. Poorly, trying, not perfect, like all that kind of stuff. And still the Lord will honor the efforts of an intentional man.
Absolutely. Wow. Well said. And I just want to give some direction. This is kind of an opening, hopefully, of the introduction of a lot of your work. And I want to direct men to the restorationproject.net. Chris's books are on there. Just go over it. It's the upper right, drop under resources, look at the books. There's experiences that Chris, that you mentioned there, but go to restorationproject.net. It is all there. And that's the call to action. Like, go check it out. There are a number of things that Chris is doing with weekends, experiences. I mean, you can go to Scotland, Ireland. I'm like, I got to go, man. I got to go. But Chris Bruno, thank you for investing some time today into the lives of men. And I know that's your heart. I tell you what, men, thanks for joining us on this episode of The Next Stage. It has been good. Chris, thanks for joining us. And until next time, may you be a man of purpose who realizes that your life is not your own and you were given impact to make. May you spread that to the next generation with young boys in your world. Until then, we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for joining us on the Next Stage podcast for men with Rob Stout. The Next Stage helps men live with purpose, born out of identity, as men made in God's image who are shaping this world for good. The Next Stage is a production of Sherpa Unlimited Coaching for Men, based in Denver, Colorado in the United States. Learn more at sherpaunlimited.com/thenextstage or follow Sherpa Unlimited on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. We love feedback. Please send your feedback, questions, or requests for future content to this email, thenextstage@sherpaunlimited.com. Again, thenextstage@sherpaunlimited.com. The Next Stage distributes episodes every 2 weeks on Wednesday mornings. The Next Stage taps the wisdom of the ancient scriptures, and if you don't have a copy of the Bible, we can help you fix that. First, you can visit any public library and check one out, or visit an online or local bookstore. Alternatively, just about any Bible-believing church would be happy to give you a Bible for a nominal price, or even free. And while you're there, make a personal introduction to the pastor or his staff, and consider attending services there this Sunday. Finally, you can just download a free Bible app called YouVersion for your smartphone. Whether you have an Apple iPhone, Google Android phone, or something else, go to your phone's app store and search YOU Version and select the YouVersion Bible. Also, you can find a link for the YouVersion Bible app in the show notes of today's podcast. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.